Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and the purpose of today's video is going to be to try to poke a few holes in a couple of very common arguments, and in my mind these arguments don't really hold too much water, and I want to sort of put them to bed today. And what I want to discuss is some very common arguments that we see in favor of free-to-play games, and specifically certain free-to-play models. You see, the issue at hand is that when it comes to free-to-play games, very often you will see people making excuses of any type to try to justify some egregious forms of microtransactions and loot box purchases in these games just because the games are free to play. And there's the arguments that you see over and over again, such as, well, the game's free, they have to make money somehow. Well, to me, I want to discuss that from a couple different angles, because to me that is just one of the weakest arguments I have ever possibly heard when it comes to game monetization, and I'm going to discuss that today. So when people say stuff like, well, don't you want the devs to make money? I mean, they're giving the game away for free. They have to make money somehow. This is such a ridiculous way of thinking, and I see it so often, both from people in comment sections, people in forums, content creators making this claim all the time, making excuses when a game charges something like $40 for custom cosmetic skins, or a game that has loot boxes, and people that would normally have problems with loot boxes and have problems with a game that had $40 cosmetic skins, well, they'll hand wave all that away and just justify it because the game is, quote, free to play. Except the problem is, once you start paying for these purchases, the game is no longer free to play, is it? It's now pay to play, and that is quite a different thing. Now, I know the term pay to play means something different in certain contexts, but in this form, what I'm saying is the game isn't free to play once your wallet comes out. So just stick with me for a minute and I will explain to you exactly what the problem is with this mentality of, oh, well, the game's free, they're giving the game away for free, so obviously they have to make money. So these loot boxes and these ridiculously priced cosmetic skins, these are justified because they're giving the game away for free. Let me ask you this. If we were, say, out in the pioneer days or whatnot, and someone was going out, say a hunter was going out to try to catch some rabbits to cook up in a stew, and he goes out and sets some snare traps and puts a little bit of food, maybe a small vegetable, a carrot, or maybe a small piece of fruit out there for the rabbit to be lured in to the snare trap, and the rabbit would hop in, grab the food, and hopefully, the hunter hopes, get caught in the trap. Now this doesn't work out too well for the rabbit, does it? However, would anyone in their right mind describe this situation as the hunter giving away a free meal to the rabbit? No. The hunter is out to catch the rabbit and do what hunters will do with the rabbit, which I don't know if YouTube will allow me to describe what exactly a hunter might do to a caught rabbit in a snare, so I will refrain from doing so. However, I think you catch the idea. But my point is this: no one would ever describe that situation as the hunter, helping the rabbit out in that situation by giving away a free meal. Yet when it comes to free-to-play games, it's the same premise. The publisher of the game, or the developer of the game, let's say, who creates the game and sets these snares in the game to try to push you towards microtransactions and towards the excess monetization of their free-to-play game, the problem therein lies that you are now being caught in the snare just like a rabbit. We're all just little rabbits and they're trying to catch us. And if you get caught in that snare trap, well, you're going to be spending an awful lot of money in some of these games. And I'm going to back this up with some statistics a little bit later on. But the point is, and I'm sure you probably get it by now, but the point is, the developers are the hunters and we're the little rabbits. And if we get caught in these traps, we're not sitting there. We shouldn't be sitting there saying and defending it and being like, well, I mean, shucks, they gave the game away for free. No, they set out a trap for you, a money trap, a money pit. And if you start shoveling money into it, like I said, the days of you being able to call the game free to play are over, because it's not free to play for you any longer. The common argument continues with the whole notion that, well, the game's free, so what do you want them to do? They have to charge somehow. And the problem with this is they didn't have to make the games free to play to start with. That was their decision to make and design a game around a free-to-play model. And we all know, even with a game like I'm showing here on the screen, with Warframe, which is a game which many people praise for the monetization, there still are pinches that players will feel if they're going to put serious time into the game. Now, you'll have to excuse the sloppy gameplay that I'm showing on the screen in this video, because I actually haven't played the game since 2017. So it's been a few years since I actually touched the game when I turned it on today just to capture this footage for this video. And the reason why I wanted to put Warframe up, because Warframe is often held up as the standard when it comes to free-to-play games. And I will admit, there is an awful lot of content in the game. And I'll get into the reason why I haven't touched Warframe since 2017 a little bit later on in the video. But I want to discuss further this notion of the game being free to play. Yes, it's free. And that is their decision. Recently, when I did videos about CD Projekt Red and their free-to-play card game Gwent going offline on consoles, where they're pulling it off consoles and concentrating on the mobile market, a lot of people brought up the fact and got a little bit upset with me when I was complaining that CD Projekt Red, who constantly criticizes loot boxes and whatnot, was using loot boxes in their free-to-play card game. And people were often coming up and saying, well, it's a free-to-play card game. I mean, the monetization model has to be loot boxes. That's how all these games do it. And my point to that was, well, yes. So why is a company like CD Projekt Red, which is always preaching against loot boxes, why are they getting into a market that is known for being greedy and for having excess monetization and for utilizing these bad monetization practices? If they are a company that doesn't believe in those practices, then why are they getting involved in the free-to-play card market to begin with? Because those games, if they always have to be monetized with card packs and random loot boxes, then why would someone who always rails against it get involved? I likened an analogy that I made was a southern preacher railing against the evils of gambling on Sunday morning, preaching from the pulpit, but then on Friday and Saturday night running a riverboat casino down the way. And that's exactly what goes on. And you see, it's not just, I don't want to bash on CD Projekt Red here. That's just a point that I made based on some recent videos that I have been done. And some of the criticisms that I got where people were making the excuse, well, it's free to play. And my point is this: these companies and these games, they choose to get involved with the free-to-play model, which by its very nature and by its very design is designed to pinch the player at certain progress points. Say they restrict you just enough. And the reason why a game like Warframe gets praised so much is they pinch you just slightly enough where you might spend a little money here and a little money there and a little bit more money here. They don't really bash you over the head with so many cosmetic skins, even though there's a ton of them to buy if you want. But they squeeze you just a little bit. You don't have to grind so much. You just got to do a little bit of grinding, and you can get these items without having to pay. And the carrot is just small enough where people buy into it. Now, a little bit earlier on, I said that I was going to explain to you why I haven't played Warframe since 2017. And the reason why is, in 2017, I picked the game up. It was a little bit of a lull in the middle of the summer. Didn't really have any game that I was really dying to get into. And I picked up Warframe. I had been hearing good things about it, and I hadn't touched the game at that point since it first launched back at the start of the console generation. I hadn't really touched the game, but I heard it made great strides. I wanted to check it out. So I popped it in 2017. And I'll admit, I got a little bit hooked, and for about a month straight, I played the game pretty much every day. I was coming home from work and just playing a lot of Warframe and maxing out this frame and maxing out this weapon, and lo and behold, I would find myself and be like, wow, I'm out of inventory space already. Well, what should I do? Well, I know that people say I can go and start trading for the premium currency in the shop, but what do I have that anyone's going to want to buy? I'm probably going to have to invest some money here if I want to keep playing, because I'm the sort of player where I'm not going to be happy if I'm not progressing in a game. And the way the game is built, you're probably always going to be pinching up against something where your character's at a max level or your weapon's at a max level. And so you'll be playing the game and you won't really be getting that grind on. You won't be getting that proper grind on that you want in a game. And so it will push you into spending a little bit of money. Now, unfortunately for me, I was the rabbit and I got caught in the Warframe trap. And in a month's time, actually a little bit less than a month's time, I ended up spending an obscene amount of money on this game, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe for some people, they'll spend way more money, and this will be a drop in the bucket for them. But I spent, in just a couple of weeks, in 1 month in the summer of 2017, $180 on Warframe. A game which I don't play anymore precisely because of that issue. Because I found myself constantly being just a little bit nudged. And I never bought any of the in-game timers. I spent all of my money on actually buying items in the game so I didn't have to grind for them. And some people say, well, I would never do that. I would never do that. And you want to know what? I haven't done that since. In a game like this, I haven't spent another dime on Warframe. And like I said, filming this footage today is the first time I've touched the game in 2.5 years. And I have consciously tried to move away from games like this with a free-to-play model. Because, precisely for this reason, because I am a rabbit that can get caught in the trap, and I know that. And you might say, well, I would never get caught in the trap. Well, earlier I said I wanted to bring us some statistics, and that's what I'm about to do now. Now, if I was a better YouTuber, I would pull up a bunch of graphics right now, but I'm just going to have to discuss an article that I read today, which brought up some very interesting statistics. The common knowledge and the common perception for many years, both amongst players and game developers, has been that in a free-to-play game, on average, you'll get roughly 1% of the player base to invest in actually spending money on your game. Most people are, as the industry likes to call them, freeloaders. And that is how it has been. However, some numbers over the last couple of years have shown that the trend is definitely headed away from the 1% model. In 2016, the number was up to 2%. And now, in 2019, the number is up close to 5%. So now, where it was before only 1 out of every 100 people is giving money to microtransactions, now 1 out of every 20 people playing a free-to-play game is likely to spend money on the game. Now, you might say, well, 4 or 5% of people, that's not a whole lot of people. No. But you see, year on year, and over time, it's gaining about 1% of the player base every year. So if we go ahead another decade, you're going to see probably 15 to 20% of any given player base, and I'm going to contend it's going to be more, and I'll explain why in a second, but you will have a much higher percentage, probably 1 in 5 or maybe even 1 in 4 people will be donating money to these quote-unquote free-to-play games. And at that point, what are you really going to call them? If you have 25% of your player base giving money to a free-to-play game, that can be ridiculous. You might say, Coach, you're jumping the gun quite a bit if you're saying 25% of a player base might be giving to a free-to-play game in 10 years. But I'll explain why. Because as time goes on, people are becoming more and more desensitized. People are buying in more and more to the nonsense argument that, oh, shucks, golly gee, these games are free, so that, loot boxes are fine, and let's $40 skins. Absolutely. This is great value in monetization. And it's absolutely not. Loot boxes aren't acceptable. I don't care if they're in a free-to-play game or not. You can monetize your game in other ways. Charging $40 for a skin in any game is absolute absurdity. And anyone who will pay that is being rather foolish with your money. Think about what you could actually spend that money on. You can go and buy an actual quality game for $40. You don't have to spend that on just a cosmetic skin. Think about the value that you're wasting your money on for a cosmetic skin at that sort of price. Or look at a game, even these paid games like Fallout 76 with $18 coloration for your power armor skin. The problem is that we keep making excuses for it and people keep accepting it, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse over time. While I was thinking about this video and reading up on certain free-to-play monetization stuff, I stumbled across some articles from near the end of last console generation, so near 2012, 2013, and into 2014. And it was funny, even some of the major gaming outlets that nowadays we wouldn't suspect at all of criticizing anything in the major AAA industry, they were writing think pieces about free-to-play and the problems with the monetization, how we, in the next generation, which is the one we're in now, and we're almost at the end of, was going to have a problem with free-to-play monetization creeping further and further into not just free-to-play games, but into regular full-price games as well. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And the numbers are backing that up. So I'm sorry if I have trouble getting on board with the mentality and the notion that free-to-play games are absolutely harmless and that any form of monetization that they go into is totally fine simply because the game is free-to-play. I think that's totally wrong, and you're just thinking of it in a completely backwards way. You need to think of it. These games are designed specifically. I read another article about this. And when game developers know this specifically, but they don't discuss it. This is not stuff that's out in the open. But when they design these games, they don't design a free-to-play game based on, let's make a good game and then we'll figure out how to monetize it with free-to-play stuff after. No, these games, in order to be successful for them, have to be based and have to be thought of in a way, where can we make pinches to pressure players into spending? How do you think a game like Warframe makes so much money? How do you think the fact is that all of these free-to-play games dominate the revenue charts? And it's not just in the mobile market. It's in regular gaming space as well. You can look at a game like Fortnite, which exploded with free-to-play, making billions of dollars in a supposed free game. And look at, League of Legends has been around forever, just making money hand over fist. Free-to-play games. Hearthstone, free-to-play games. These games just make fortunes upon fortunes, and we just keep deluding ourselves and calling it free to play because that's just it's free to start. You can get in. Look at all these services they're providing. Look, they're doing constant updates. Of course they're doing constant updates because they're making a mountain of money off of you. And the notion always seems to be that these poor struggling developers, many of them are making insane amounts of money off these free to play models. And that's just the fact of it. I don't know why we have to keep pretending like these people are struggling and they're giving the game away for free. Oh, the darlings. Give me a break. Can we stop and just call these games what they are? They are money traps. Even the best ones. Someone like myself who should know better, who does know better. I understand all this stuff. I still found myself walking right into the Warframe trap. And that's why I'm talking about this today. Because when I see people making excuses, and I just saw a video about this the other day, and down in the comments, people are like, I'm okay with spending money on this game. I spent $500 on this game, and I'm totally fine with it because I played it for 1,000 hours. I'm just like, you spent $500 on a game. Just step away, step back for a second and just think about that. And the problem is no one does. People don't think about the incremental spending. When I didn't just drop $180 on Warframe, and if you had told me, Coach, would you pay $180 to play Warframe again? I would say absolutely not. It's absurd that I paid that amount of money and I don't play it. I don't play the game anymore. I didn't fall for the sunk cost fallacy, at least. I didn't keep feeling like I had to play it, so at least I was able to get myself out of that trap. But regardless, the spending becomes incremental. You don't spend $180, in my case, all at once. You put $20 down, or maybe $40, and then another $20. The next thing you know, you're like, wait a minute. I spent way too much money on this game. I spent 3 times the cost of a normal game. And like I said, I never would have actually handed you $180 at once to play Warframe. It's absolutely absurd, but that's what happens in these games. And like I said, the numbers do back up the fact that more and more people are starting to fall into these traps. I know I fell into the trap. I've gotten myself out, luckily enough, but more and more people are starting to fall right into these money traps, and that is the problem that I'm seeing. And people going out and defending these practices and just excusing it all simply because it's free to play is absolute nonsense. It's absolute ridiculousness. And I'm tired of hearing that excuse being used to defend any sort of bad monetization that normally people would go out of their way to criticize, and it's got to stop because look at where it's getting us. Constantly making excuses for the industry and bad monetization has gotten us further and further away from high quality creative games that weren't just paint by numbers monetization schemes designed to just sell us booster packs and loot boxes and everything else under the sun. It's the constant apologizing and defending that has gotten us to this point. And the spending, which is why, like I said, I don't spend money on this stuff anymore. And maybe you shouldn't either. And maybe, even if you do want to spend money on it, see, real quick. The other problem is people will make defenses if it's their favorite game. Well, normally I don't like it, but I like this game, so I'll spend money on it. And people constantly try to justify it oh, I like this game, so I'll spend money on this, but those other games, they're doing it wrong, even though they're doing the exact same thing. The problem is every major game has defenders that will defend it, which gives developers the impression that no matter what they put out there, people will defend it because, like I said, every game has their own defenders. And so when you start making exceptions to your own rules, where you say, I won't buy games that have loot boxes, except for this game over here because I like this developer, well, you're only feeding into the problem still. You're still part of the issue. And that's why I'm trying to not be part of the issue anymore. And if more people would stop, maybe this wouldn't be a problem. But like I said, the numbers don't back it up. The numbers show that this is a losing battle that I'm trying to fight here. But anyway, that's it for me, Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please subscribe. If you want to stay in tune with the channel, head forward. And as always, keep it turned to 11.